Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Crash. This is episode 11, and I am your host, Gethin Meyers. And today we're going to be talking about dyslexia. We're also going to be talking about the struggles dyslexia have had when doing readings, and also talk a little bit about like comfort zone and challenges and stuff like that. So there is quite a lot in this episode that we are going to be covering in such a short space of time. So let's get started. So the idea of this came from last night. I was doing a TikTok live, and at the end of every live I had to read to people, and we're reading a book called One Decision, and it came on the topic how some words I'm not very good at reading, and I read some of the words slightly wrong, and it's all because of my dyslexia, and I only learned how to read a couple of years ago properly with adult books. And it really got me thinking today, this morning, about the challenges and how much I've actually overcome as soon as I switched my mindset from using dyslexia as an obstacle, something that was stopping me from achieving what I want to achieve, to switching it to an opportunity to grow. When I actually finally sat down and learned how to read properly and actually enjoy reading books, my whole life changed. My whole life, it just got better because I realized I can do anything I put my mind to, because dyslexia has stopped me from achieving so much for so long. It stopped me from achieving so much for so long, and now I've overcome it massively, and my reading's improved massively. So let's take you back to when I first got diagnosed with dyslexia. So before that, I used to go to, obviously, primary school, comprehensive. I went through all of this time not knowing I was dyslexic, not knowing I had ADHD. And it was a period of my life where, yeah, I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy learning. I didn't enjoy anything to do with a classroom, sitting down, learning. My spellings, I used to come home, I used to either hide them, or I used to just remember the pattern of them all, which it makes a lot of sense now, looking back. So my mom would test me on my spellings, and she would read them in order, how they was written, and I would get 10 out of 10. So then my mom would be like, brilliant, right, let's try it again. And she'd mix the order up of them. And I would get hardly any out of 10, because what I used to do, I used to spell them the same as how they were written in the order, because I remembered the order rather than the sounds and the stuff that they made. Or like I'd just be absolutely completely way off, because I hate it when people are like, oh, just say it how it sounds. It's not that easy for a dyslexic person, you know? For me personally, I can't look at a word and be like, right, this makes but wherever, you know, take the word, I don't know, focus, for instance. I can't look at the word on paper and look at it and go, oh, cuss. You know, like I can't, I don't even know if I sounded that out right there, but when I look at a word, I look at it as if it's a all in one. So it just makes one sound. So I've learned that the pattern of like the formation of the letters, they just make that one sound. I'm not able to break it down. So when I see new words that I'm not familiar with, this is why I could read the same word wrong 20 different times. And it's quite funny when you think about it, because yeah, it's crazy how dyslexia works, but I'm better at recognizing patterns because of my dyslexia. So growing up, going through school, people used to make me read, and reading in front of people is my biggest fear, because obviously I wasn't very good at it. I didn't enjoy it, and I'd be stood at the front going because I get all my vowels mixed up. So A, E, I, O, U, they all sound the same to me. I get my D's, B's, P's, and Q's mixed up. I get my W's, N's, and M's mixed up. C, K's, and S's mixed up. So pretty much the whole alphabet. I'm getting mixed up when I was reading, and it's quite funny because it explains why my handwriting's not very good. obviously it's improved massively, and it's improved while my spelling's not very good. And there's so many things that getting diagnosed with dyslexia have made me understand. And it's really strange. I went through all of primary school and comprehensive, and it wasn't until I went to college that there was like, oh, there's something that's not quite right with the way you're reading, with the way you're writing, the way that you're writing your homework and essays and assignments. We suggest that you go private and you get tested for dyslexia. So my mom, being my mom, and my dad being my dad, you know, they was like, right, let's get it booked in. I wasn't too bothered because I was like, yeah, I can't see it. No one else has picked up on it. You know, I passed my GCSEs in school through grit and determination. So I was like, yeah, I can't see it. So anyway, we put for the dyslexia, and I went to the test. And it turns out I'm severely dyslexic. I had the reading ability of a 3 to 5 year old, which, you know, being 17 years old at the time, 18 years old, is not really what he wants. Maybe 16? Yeah, so between 16 and 18, you don't really want to be having the reading ability of a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, you know? So it made loads of sense. And while I was there was also like, there's also a high signs of ADHD. We got time now. Would you like to get tested and stuff for it? Obviously, it's going to be an additional cost. And I was like, yeah, might as well. We're here. So yeah, I got diagnosed with ADHD and I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And it explained a lot of why I am, who I am. But it also, you have a choice after you get diagnosed. You can either let it define you, or you can find ways to overcome it. And the book I'm reading at the moment, One Decision, it really emphasizes this point, because a part of it is about, you got a choice to have different lenses that you wear on a daily. You could either use it as an obstacle and a reason, an excuse, or you can see it as an opportunity. You can see it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to teach something new, to find a way through it, to overcome it. So I'll never get cured of dyslexia. Don't get me wrong. There's some days where I can't even string a sentence together. Everything is just jumping all over the page. You know, those days are hard days, and especially when I got to read a church or, you know, the recent TikToks. But what I've understood is the fact that I'm putting myself out my comfort zone. I'm reading philosophies in front of people in the churches and stuff. It's had a massive effect on me improving my reading. And it's quite funny because going back, I used to write text messages that they didn't even make sense. Like every word I was spelling, it was spelling it wrong, you know, to the point spell check didn't even have a clue what it was saying. And I'd just be like, well, it's not my problem. It's other people's problems. They got to try and figure it out for themselves, you know? And I was like, one day after owning my own company, I was reading emails, and then I'd have to get my mom to read the email and then get my mom to help me write the email, because I didn't understand like the grammar, capital letters and all that kind of stuff. And one day I was like, this is just taking too long. This is taking too long to have a third person doing all this work. So I sat down and I bought a load of kids' books. I can't remember it now. I bought a load of David Walliams stories and Diary of the Wimpy Kid. And I sat down and I read them. I read them, and it took me about 3 months, 4 months to read a book. A kid's book, bear in mind, where the writing is big and there's pictures. So you can imagine how, not deflated, but like it wasn't a good feeling knowing that other people read a book in a day, you know. And I learned the valuable lesson. This was before I came into the spiritual movement, is not to compare yourself to other people. And everything's kind of fallen into place. So I set myself the goal. I wanted to read X amount of books in, I think it was like 2021 when I first started the spiritual movement. And I was 1 book short. And I was very deflated. But then I was like, wait, you go back to when I was in school. I didn't even own a book, you know, like I was dead against books. And now I got 2 bookshelves in my room, which is filled to the brim with books of various different types that help you. And I'm a strong believer that if I'm going to read, I'm going to read books that are going to help me, rather than the fantasy books like Harry Potter and stuff like that. even though they had a big part of helping me learn, you know, the kids' books with the David Walliams and the Diary of the Wimpy Kid, I didn't benefit from them. Like, when I was reading them, I didn't benefit from them, apart from the fact that I learned how to see the words a little bit better. And that was because it was bold writing. But what I've noticed, if the book writing is like fancy writing, I can't read that. When the writing's joined together, I haven't got a clue where it is. It looks like a bunch of spaghetti on the page, you know? And it's crazy because some days I can't even, like I said, I can't even read properly. And a lot of people don't understand that dyslexia actually affects the way you hear words being said as well. So your sound recognition is a lot different to how it should be. So a lot of people don't actually understand this. So when I'm trying to learn a new language and people are saying a word, I think I'm hearing it completely right. And then in my head, I'm like, right, I'm hearing this right. So I'm going to repeat it. And when I'm repeating it, the sound don't come out properly. So this is why I struggle saying big words and stuff like that, is because there's a part of dyslexia that you're not able to, you know, it affects all areas. It's not just your reading. It's also your vocabulary. It's also your vocals. It's also your listening. So I'm able to listen to people, but I'm not able to reciprocate it how I want to, you know? So, and this is all parts that I had to learn. So it's really interesting because I was learning a bit of German out in Thailand with some of the Germans. And a lot of the people, when you're trying to learn their language, they're really understanding, they're really accepting of the fact that you're trying to learn their language. But there was one individual I can remember, we was all having a laugh and a joke and trying to learn, and then he come over and he was just like, oh, you're so stupid, you're getting it wrong, blah, 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 it's easy. And I was just like, yeah, but what you got to understand is I'm not like most people, and I'm dyslexic, severe dyslexic, not using it as an excuse. I'm trying my hardest, and I'm not going to give up until I've learned it. We was also on the live the other day learning French, and I had an absolutely amazing French teacher, and the people in the chat was helping me. And I struggled like crazy, and I finally got it. And then they asked me to say it again, and I completely forgot it because of the sound, because I was trying to remember the sound, and it was the wrong way I did it. But I got there in the end. And it took a little bit longer, and I was very grateful for them helping me out, and I really appreciate them. And it was nice. It was nice that people was respectful and they had the patience. So this just goes to show that there's lots of challenges that I could have sat back and said, you know what, I'm going to let the dyslexia win, because I did for such a long time. I used to see the dyslexia as an obstacle. I never used to see it as an opportunity to grow. Now I'm reading a book in about a month, 2 months. It takes me a couple of weeks, depending on how much time and stuff I have, which looking back, I never thought I would be reading books. I never thought I would actually finish a book, let alone enjoy reading, enjoy the learning, reading to people, reading out loud to people. No chance. But since coming into the spiritual movement, it's absolutely amazing how it's all unfolded. And I read a philosophy in church, and when I first started, there was no emotion in my voice. I was literally monotone the whole way through. Now I'm starting to understand the pauses. I'm starting to understand how to change your voice, how to read. I'm understanding the punctuation, the commas, the full stops, capital letters. Capital letters was such a big thing for me. And now I'm finally starting to understand it. And I'm so happy that I'm able to understand it. And this is all because I found a way around the problem. I found a way around the obstacle, because rather than reading the words as sounds or reading it as, I read them as emojis. So when I'm looking at a book, it's just basically strings of emojis. So each word is its set emoji because the pattern is the same. There's consistency with the letters. So rather than trying to focus on this sounds like this, I just look at it as an emoji. So this is why I'll read words wrong. This is why when I look at the word vegetable, I can't say it properly. It's because in my head, I'm just reading it how it is. So this is something I need to work on to be able to say it properly. Same as the word tongue. This is one word that I can say absolutely perfect, but I can't spell it, and I can't read the word. Like when I go to spell the word, I always get it wrong because I'm always putting the U in the wrong place because that's how it sounds. So I need to get out the headspace of sounding the words out and just going with how it looks. So this brings me on to the next point, where it's the fact that it can affect the mediumship. And it's not very often. Like most of the time when I'm doing mediumship, I ask spirit to take it off me. I ask spirit to take away the dyslexia. But you do get some spirits who wants to play with you, and they'll show you it in a word form. So like, for instance, if I get the word Michael, sometimes I've got it wrong because it's like Mitchell or it's Mickey or it's but I just know like the first couple of letters, if that makes sense. Or I've heard it slightly wrong where like words like I don't know, Lewis and Louise, you know, because it's that both, or Lois and Lewis, because they're both spelt very similar. Does that make sense? So like sometimes I might just get it confused like that, or Louis and, you know, whatever. You get some complicated names, so, or like street signs. Sometimes spirits are very helpful and they'll tell you clearly what they're trying to say. Other times, if they had a bit of personality and they like to see people struggle, yeah, you know, like sometimes I'm struggling, I'm fighting for my life because they'll put my dyslexia on me, which also sometimes is a sign that there's someone around the person receiving the reading is suffering with dyslexia. So what I want you to take from this little chat about my dyslexia, you might be struggling with dyslexia yourself, and this might really have given you a bit of insight to allow yourself to overcome it. Because let me tell you, I've overcome it massively, and yeah, I feel so much better for being able to do that for myself. I'm spelling words properly when I'm talking to people. I don't do this B4, you know, where I do like the letter B and then the number 4. I actually write the word, and M8, you know, the letter M and then the number 8. I actually spell mate, you know. So it's like little things like that, little changes, like your. You know, I'm actually starting to do the right your, because, yeah, that's confusing. Used to confuse me all the time. Same with like they. I use the right they in the sentence. So I'm starting to get used to using the right words, because it's going to help me when I'm talking, when I'm reading. And I've noticed that since doing this, like the mediumship, and since doing TikTok, I've had to change the way I speak. Whereas before I used to speak very rough and ready because, again, I used to blame the dyslexia. That's why I wasn't able to talk properly. I actually talk much clear so that people can actually understand me. So before I used to talk with a very thick, heavy Welsh accent. And like I said, blamed on dyslexia. That's why I talk this way. But now I want to talk more clear so that I can communicate effectively with more people. And it was a big change for me. It started when I first went to Thailand, to be fair. The first time I went, I ended up in hospital. I got bit by a spider and ended up in the hospital. Long story short, I had to have a translator for the translator because I just wasn't communicating effectively. Now, when I went to Thailand, a lot more foreign people, German, French, Swiss, they understand me a lot more clear, so that they're able to have a lot more conversations with me. Whereas when I first started, even though they was having conversations with me, it was very limited because I was being a bit selfish and I was talking the way I wanted to talk rather than being an effective communicator. So this whole thing is just to show you that you can overcome any challenge when you change your mindset from looking at it as an obstacle to looking at it as an opportunity. Because my dyslexia allows me to do problem solving, puzzle solving, you know, an escape room. I'm absolutely brilliant at, because I look at things differently, because I'm always looking for that pattern. I'm always looking for that puzzle, the bit to slot together, because it's exactly the same as how I overcome reading, is using my strengths. I've always been a logical thinker. I've always been work better with pictures. So why don't I just make symbols for myself with when I'm coming to the reading, if that makes sense. So just have a think of that. Just have a think on some of the things that you can change in your life from seeing it as an obstacle to seeing it as an opportunity. So just know that anything is possible when you put your mind to it. If you had told my younger self that we'd be sat here doing a podcast talking about how we're actually reading books I'd call you a liar. I'd call you a straight up liar, and I wouldn't believe it. And here we are. I actually enjoy reading, and that's a statement you'll hear me say quite often. I enjoyed reading this book. I enjoyed reading this, or I learned this from this book. Whereas before, I never used to do any of that. I didn't even revise for any of my exams, and I scraped past. So just know anything is possible. You're able to overcome any difficulties that you're going into. And if you've enjoyed this episode, comment, like, let me know which part has really stood out for you. And if you wanted any further updates on my dyslexia or anything like that, or you want to talk about dyslexia a little bit more, we might do another episode of it. Just comment down below. Make sure you're following for future episodes. Every Monday there will be a new episode of the podcast. So once again, this has been Spiritual Crash. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your time. I am proud of you. I love you all. And we just know we're going to smash wherever we put our minds forward to. So I've been your host, Gethin Meyers, and just have a beautiful day. Good.